How am I? Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
Okay, that's good.
Nothing too much out of the ordinary, I don't think. But I'm doing okay. How about you? More importantly, how about you?
Been I guess many days down in the dumps, sort of a little. Yeah, I'm not sure. Just one of those, I guess bipolar type things. Because when I eat wrongly or something like that.
Okay. So what have you been eating?
I've been eating things that I shouldn't be eating.
Yeah, like what?
Well, like too many carbs,
Okay. Yeah.
and the wrong vegetables, and so I haven't been eating a balance. I think that's probably the bottom line. Yeah.
And it's induced a fog, has it?
Yeah, it's an issue that I'm aware of, and I know I can resolve it. I go back onto a being very conscious of a high fat diet, good fat diet, and keep my vegetables, generally the vegetables, to a minimum, and do selected vegetables, like parsnips and things like that that I can eat with my meat. And
so is that like root vegetables, is it?
no, not per se, but there's certain root vegetables that I tend not to eat unless they are resistant starch. So if I take potatoes and make them resistant starch, then that's fine. And that snacks, and it also makes me feel full. But so does fat. Fat also makes me feel full, so I don't feel like snacking then. Okay, and then I just make sure that I eat sort of a variety of things, like possibly microgreens, and make sure that fresh herbs come into whatever I cook and eat as well. And yeah, but try and get the quantity, the percentage wise of what I eat more into, the good fats, the avos, the sardines, the salmon, and yeah, pork as well, very fatty meat. That's fine. So yeah, that's. But what happens is when you no, I'm not going to say you, I'm going to say me. Okay, when I stay well for many weeks, that's when I become complacent. I sort of think, well, let's have some of my favorite carrot cake, and then we buy them. Then let's have it's coming up to Christmas. Let's have some Christmas cake, okay? And I haven't had some good old salty cracked biscuits or something, haven't had a good slice of toast with marmalade,
And there it is.
And there it is. And then I wonder why I'm not feeling up to it anymore, and I'm a bit moody around the house. But anyway, that's so much for me. I was thinking about something this morning, and that was, we talk about different dimensions, okay, and we know different dimensions exist and so on, and then the third dimension that we're in, of course, you were talking a lot last time, and that's probably why I was thinking about it, about time, in this, and how, reverse time and what happens and so on. But I sort of took your talk last time, and in my mind, I don't think it was only this morning. I think I probably during the last couple of days, but certainly this morning I did. And I was thinking, now if you could tell the future, in other words, if you could look into the future, into time, okay, like call it whatever you want to call it, but looking into the future and seeing what's going to happen. Okay. Then what you would do, if it was negative, you would not do that to make that happen. So therefore, you've changed the outcome. So what you saw is no longer relevant. You agree? I mean, it seems strange to go to thinking about going to a dimension that doesn't have time. Okay, because time does what I've just said. Something's going to happen. What you do now, something's going to happen. There's an outcome of what you do now into the future in a three-dimensional. So some people can see into the future or go into another dimension where they can, look at the time, they can see their outcome. And then, so it doesn't make sense, because then you change it and then you don't have the same outcome that was seen. So there's no predestiny, there's no results. What do you think about it?
Yeah, within the context of three dimensions, I think the future is just possibilities, isn't it? So because there's a, like from a scientific perspective, there's this. It's got a name, but it's also just has a colloquial name, like the butterfly effect. Have you heard of that? The butterfly effect?
Yes, I have. Yeah, the butterfly wings its wings here, and there's a thunderstorm on the other side of the world.
Yeah. So in that sense, it's hard to know. Because the trouble is when you talk about time, you're always looking for points, aren't you, along that continuum? So you might see something and say, "Oh, this is a bad thing which is going to happen at a certain point in the future." But how do we know that? Because how many times in your own life have you experienced things at the time you think, "Oh, this is absolutely terrible," but it turns out to be one of the best things that's ever happened to you. So.
Yeah.
So it's a little difficult to dissect it down like that, I think. And I think maybe it's part of being human as well, in the sense that, imagine if you were like that friend of yours that we met up in England, the rock spider.
Yes.
So I don't know, what's the lifespan of a rock spider? Like, I don't know, a month, something like that. So if your lifespan is a month, then I guess you'll see things somewhat differently as well, So, but if your lifespan is 80 years or 90 years or 100 years, then you'll have a certain perspective as well. But if you have the lifespan of, say, like the planet, for example, then, you'll see things differently again, because lots of things will happen over those millions and millions of years. But it won't assign a value perspective of good or bad to it, though.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that my thinking is that we live we fully understand living in the third dimension, the time zone. Okay, there was a yesterday and there is a tomorrow, based on the fact that we're in a third dimension. Okay, but if we had to suddenly go into a dimension that doesn't have time, okay, then I know we speak about it, every aspect is only now, I assume. Okay, there's awareness that only now, and yet things are evolving. So the galaxies are evolving, and then new galaxies being formed, and then and we are evolving. and we turn into other beings. Perhaps I can understand that more easily than I can with galaxies, because we evolve. It doesn't really. I suppose we were like that at that time, which is in the past, and we are like we are now, which is the current. But the point that I was making, or what I was thinking about, is, you know, you get a fortune teller to tell you something, and you get, then, you know, let's assume they're really, really good and they can see into the future. Then you change your behavior, and now you've just changed what they've seen. You know, let's assume that the fortune teller looked and said, you know, you're planning to go on a long trip. Okay, I strongly recommend you don't, because the plane's going to crash. Okay, so now you don't go onto that long trip. You don't get onto that plane, and the plane either crashes or it doesn't crash. Okay, but the point is, you have changed your destiny. Okay, based on some future prediction.
But don't we do that now, though?
That's what I'm trying to get my head around this morning.
Because, well, in one sense, like, you know, I can think of lots of occasions in my life where you're confronted with a decision. You know, you arrive at an intersection. Do I turn left or do I turn right? And you make a decision and you go and do that. But then sometimes I've found myself reflecting, it's like, oh, I wonder what would have happened if I didn't do that.
Yeah. That's part of the question. That's part of the dilemma. Yeah.
So what would have happened? And I mean, at this stage, we don't probably know what would have happened. You know, because things have a way of being what they are. But the other thing, though, about thinking about other dimensions, though, and maybe this is part of waking up, perhaps, I don't know, is it seems to me that other dimensions don't have time because they don't have motion. Like they're still and they're silent. So it seems that time only comes into play when things move.
Like when you've got a physical body that moves, or a body, whether it be an energy body or whatever in another dimension. Yeah.
So something that's in motion, because then motion says that you're moving through
from A to B.
Yeah, or from one dimension to two dimensions to three dimensions, you know, because you're moving through those dimensions. But to move from point A to point B, it takes time.
Yeah.
So if you go into a dimension where it's still, then my sense of it is it's just all knowing, like it's just all there. You know, you don't need to be making decisions about anything, you know. So perhaps
it's the consciousness then, without any movement, without anything that indicates movement.
Well, the other way to look at it too, of course, is that in this incarnation, you know, there's this body, which is things that I've collected over the years, you know, basically the food that I've eaten, you know. And then there's this mind, which is also things that I've collected over time, so impressions and thoughts and experiences and things like that. But there is that third element, which is beyond both of that. And so maybe moving into those other dimensions you know, the stairway to that is through that third element.
And that other element that you're talking about is just pure consciousness.
Yeah, or would you've also talked about soul, perhaps?
Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps that might be another label you could put on it, maybe.
But the soul implies an entity. Certainly in the third dimension, it's an entity, but maybe it's not.
Well, let's bring it down to, you know, a bit of concreteness too. I mean, so what happens when you die?
Hmm.
You know, you drop the body. I'm thinking you probably drop the mind as well.
Not straight away.
No, not
Not your personality. No, you sort of keep your personality straight away, but afterwards. But then, you know, as you evolve, and let's say you don't reincarnate, so now you move through, you certainly still got your mental body and you got your subconscious mind as well.
Mm.
And then those things fall away. Yeah.
Mm. But you're still there.
Yes, because you are consciousness. That's why I used the word. The soul is still there. No, absolutely. The soul will continue. You know, I guess until you dissolve into God. Okay. Okay, but so that's many dimensions and much evolvement.
And that's the looking forward, so to speak, in anticipation is that, well, what does spiritual development look like after this?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Now, there are some people like Moya and others who have transcended the body while they're here.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not contingent upon dying in that physical sense.
Oh, absolutely not. No, he definitely tries to encourage everybody to find it here, you know, in this dimension, yeah, on this planet. Yeah.
And isn't that fascinating when you think about how minuscule this planet is, you know? And maybe the analogy, like, you know, it was sort of funny, like through the week there, I was thinking about things in the sense that there's always evidence of the macro and the micro right before our eyes, you know. So one of the, like, for example, one of the things is like the dance of the cosmos, you know, the way the galaxies move and interact and weave and that. Well, you know, the presence of that here on Earth for me was when you see starlings in the murmuration. Have you heard of that term, murmuration?
No.
It's where the birds all go into flight and they go through all sorts of shapes and dimensions.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, you know that, and when you look at that, you sort of think, how do the birds just not fly into each other? You know, because that dance in the sky that they do it's like a divine control over all the forms and shapes and movement that they have, you know.
Yeah.
But so too is the galaxies and the solar system and that as well, you know, and you can sort of say, you know, you can look at a dust mite, you know, in a ray of sunshine coming through your window, you know, but part of that relativity is that, you know, our sun, you know, which is significantly larger than you or I, or even our planet, can take on dust-like proportions when you put it in comparison to, you know, what it's orbiting around, you know. So, but the beauty of it is, for me, and this I guess is what I was thinking of through the week, is that you can see that here if you choose to look for it. You know, you can see that. So you can see the spiral of a galaxy. You can see the spiral, particularly in plants and shells and things like that. You can see those spirals there. You know, the dance of the galaxies. You can see it in the murmurations. You know, anything that you choose to think about, either at that macro level or even at the micro level, you know, there's evidence of it here right before us.
And here's some of it.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly right.
Absolutely, still beautiful. It's the absolute perfect rose, and it's been the perfect rose for a long, long time now. Yeah, but there you can see those circles that you're describing. Yeah.
So it's there before us if we choose to look and see things as they really are. But the interesting thing about that is the patterns, they repeat themselves, you know, at all of these sort of levels. So when you start to think about, you know, things like concepts about like future, I mean, take the rose as an example, you know, that as that plant, even if you take it like a snapshot, like from the moment that it buds to the moment through to the period that it blooms. You know, how does it have to think about any of that? Like, are there decision points along the way?
Yeah.
You know? But I think where humans are different though, because the flower just does it. It doesn't have to think about it. It just expresses itself by being. But from a human perspective, I think we're maybe the only incarnation on this planet where we have that self-awareness. You know? I think that's an accurate statement. Don't know. Maybe it's not.
But now let's look at it. Let's just come back to Earth. Okay. This fits into, let's say, the opposite, because when I say come back to Earth, I mean, you know, come back to this plane of duality. Okay. So we've been talking about one section of that duality. Now, do you know that Facebook has changed its name?
Yeah, I heard. Yeah.
Okay. Now it's changed it to Meta. Okay. Now I can't get my head around, and I think some of the people that have written about it can't get their head around, because I don't know if they're actually words of what is, you know, you must know that anything that Facebook or the founder is now moving into meta, let's call it technology, because I don't know what other word to use. Okay. Meta, moving to the meta environment, it can only be the other side of what we're talking about. It can only be satanic. Okay. Because to give up, you know, this biggest app on the planet, okay, Facebook, and well, he hasn't given it up actually, but to change the name and want to go into a totally new direction with this meta environment. Do you know anything about the meta environment?
Well, isn't it from a technology perspective? Meta isn't it that layer of data?
It's a layer of darkness. Okay. It's almost nothingness. Okay.
But it's
the black matter.
Yeah, like a dark matter sort of thing. Yeah.
You see, when I was thinking about it, I just thought, I immediately thought of Star Trek. Okay, and you go into that room in Star Trek. What do they call it? What's that room where it now that's your reality. You set the reality whatever you want. Go forward, go back in time, whatever, and everything that happens in that room is your reality while you're in that room. I just got to think of the name. You know it.
So there's actually a page on Facebook. I'm just looking at it now that Zuckerberg has put up, and it's called Meta. Have you seen his logo?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen anything.
Can I show you this?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to research it yet.
Can I show it to you on Skype? I don't know.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, yeah,
share. You can share screen.
Share screen. Okay. So can you see that? Or?
Yeah, I can see that.
So he says here, Meta is helping build a future where people have more ways to play and connect in the metaverse. Welcome to the next chapter of social connection. Yeah.
Now that's exactly what I'm talking about. It brings me to Star Trek. Okay. That environment in that room, I can't think of the name, but where you go in there and you are now real. So in other words, nation leaders could, go into their room and they are all but physically together.
So he's got a video on here. It's entitled "The Tiger and the Buffalo." Let's see what that says. It only goes for a minute.
Yeah, I see that. Now, those people are part and parcel of what those animals are doing. They're in the same space.
Isn't that interesting? The dimension of imagination. I don't know if I like that. Anyway.
I don't at all. Okay, and my first reaction was, no, this is not... and it can't be anyway. Maybe I just my negativity towards the man. I don't know.
Yeah. Because there's.
It's the opposite of evolving in consciousness. Okay.
Seems to be, doesn't it? It seems to be very much a lead.
Yes.
A lead control, isn't it?
An entrapment. An entrapment. A conditioning. A make-believe world.
Okay. Very sort of Matrix-like, isn't it?
Yes. Very Matrix-like. And as I'm saying, we've been conditioned to it for as long as Star Trek has been showing, since the 60s through to now. Whatever that room is called, is what happens, and that's what he wants. He wants to, like, each of us sitting at home enter that room.
Let's just think about the algorithms that drive it at the moment. So the artificial intelligence that is built around it at the moment draws attention to and gives energy to things that other people will want to watch. And hence when you see some of these so-called viral videos and that, they normally involve, you know, suffering and pain and shock and horror and all of that sort of stuff, don't they?
I don't think Meta is about watching. Okay,
Mm.
um, I I um, I really don't. And what we saw in the video, it sort of implies that there were people watching something and then getting involved. Um,
Well, they merged into the picture, didn't they?
yeah, that's the point. They merged into the picture. Um, and so I think they go beyond watching. I think it's a he uses the word imagination. I think it's more like mind control.
Mm.
Okay, you know, I can see country leaders, you know, the president of the United States and Britain, you know, going into a megaverse, let's call it the metaverse, and having a consultation, okay, and as if they were sitting, you know, very different to, let's say, Zoom or Skype, where there are two cameras pointing at the person and they're talking, so they're viewing. Okay, you and I
Well,
are viewing
well,
each other.
when he launched it, all of the people in the audience in the room that were there were wearing those
Yes.
virtual reality
Yeah.
um, glasses, or whatever you call them, headsets. You know?
Yeah. 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 Um, so it goes way in, with me with no knowledge, just my sense of it. Um, and as I say, it might come from my background of Star Trek. I don't know,
Mm.
but that it goes way beyond viewing. It's actually experiencing. Okay. So how do you experience something? You've got to get your emotions involved. You've got to get your intellect involved. You've got to get your brain, your conscious mind involved. Um, and so to do that, there needs to be some sort of program, you know, some sort of influence, whether it's done through sound or imagery, um, or subliminal sounds, okay, or
I mean, if you look at the advent of the mobile phone or the smartphone, I mean, it's captured people's minds, hasn't it? You know, like you see it all around you. You go for a walk in the morning, and people they're walking down a footpath looking at this bloody phone, you know, or headphones attached and things like that. So maybe the next iteration of that is this, you know, wearing some form of technology which also hijacks your vision and your hearing and other senses perhaps
yeah,
at the same time. You
all
know?
of it,
So,
and
mm,
feeling, I'm sure.
mm, mm, mm. Can't be a good thing.
No, it can't be. For the very reason it stops you evolving as an individual.
Mm,
Spiritual evolvement. It's taking you away. It's focusing your mind as much as the smartphone does to its degree as well.
mm.
But you can still become aware of spiritual teachings and things like that on the cell phone and on even on Facebook. Okay, and but now this is going to take away that freedom.
Mm.
Okay, because it's going to send messages to your brain that you're not even aware that
Yeah,
you get in them.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're absolutely right, because how else do you become part of the picture?
Yeah,
It has to
yeah,
hijack it, doesn't it? You know. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then it can brainwash us.
Mm.
It can send
Mm.
us to war when we
Mm.
take off the glasses because now our brain is that way inclined.
Mm. Well, it also brings up the question about, well, who paints the picture?
Yeah.
You know, who painted the
You're
picture?
the most evil people on the planet.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Yeah. And Zuckerberg can talk his way around any Congress just by, patting them on the shoulder and boosting their ego.
Well, big technology is doing whatever it feels like now, isn't it?
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. And I can't see how this particular environment, this metaverse, has a positive extension, positive somewhere. I don't know.
Well, the fundamental question that needs to be answered is how is this serving humanity?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, in my opinion, the little bit of conversation I've had today only, and it's negative. It's serving negatively. But what we do know, and this is where Zuckerberg worries me, okay, that there is black alien technology where you can get from here to Mars just like walking through a door. Okay, we've had some years ago now. We've had people who've run away from that process and then talked about it.
But there seems to be a mad rush to get to Mars and to other places, doesn't there? Like, why is that?
Well, I think besides ego, I'm really not sure, because what they've been doing up to now is getting to Mars through the black projects, but I'm not sure which dimension they're landing up on Mars. Okay.
Because I read an article there literally only a couple of days ago as well, talking about building infrastructure on the moon. Because all of a sudden they said, that they found water on the moon and it's near one of the polar regions and only gets 8 days of sun a year, but that's enough. Right. That's enough sun to charge a solar battery up, and and we're going to build a whole infrastructure there, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, no, that's quite right. And they found another chemical too that can make rocket fuel to send people to Mars from the moon. Okay, that can actually make, and they're also talking about having found it on Mars. Okay. So there's a lot going on. I have a particular fancy with this whole outer space, Mars, and I think in a previous incarnation or previous whatever, I was somehow involved in interplanetary, just because of the interest that I have in it, and
But why do you think they're so keen to? Well, I mean, to me, it smacks of just abandoning the Earth. It's like abandoned ship.
Yeah, definitely is that aspect to it, and I agree. And I even did a class on how much money's been spent that hasn't been spent on Earth, but been spent in space. Okay, and really, and I couldn't get a lot of agreement from my learners. They are so brainwashed that they can't just have an open discussion about it. Okay. And so conditioned. But from my perspective, I have no doubt that Mars, going back some of the Earth times, that whenever disaster happened at Earth, it happened in Mars. So it could have been a galaxy problem that wiped out humanity there and there, and now we're crawling back at a very, very slow space when you think of the last 2,000 years.
Well, the alien that that is often interviewing Igor with the Latra.
Yeah.
I mean, I can recall watching a video where someone asked her, or she's got a female form anyway. You know, this life, you know, that was there on Mars and the other planets. I think the question was phrased. You know, like, you know, where is that from? And her answer was, well, that's you. That's where you came from. She said, that's you. That's where you came from.
Sorry, I missed you something from Mars.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and other planets.
Yeah, okay.
Because I guess if you go back to some of the folklore of early humanity, you know, there was a whole range of beings, wasn't there? You know, that were there, and, you know, it's hard to determine what's human and what wasn't human, really, wasn't it? You know, so.
Yeah, no, I go along with what she says, because if we go back a few thousand years, yes, you know, those aliens that were here, particularly in Africa and Egypt, and turned whatever humanity was here into slaves, pretending that they were gods because of their powers. But where did the slaves come from? You see, I go with the Alatra woman understanding, but I think there's still something that perhaps she doesn't know. You know, just because she's an alien doesn't mean that she has all the knowledge. Okay,
No.
She's just another person from somewhere else, and so, you know, if we go back to you know, how humanity started here, you know, then we still have humanity here. So we didn't come originally, I'm talking about now, from another planet. Okay. Okay. Whatever in this third dimension was started, as far as humanity is concerned, was a human being that came first and foremost into the astral world and was formulated in the astral world, and then, you know, as is depicted biblically, you know, ate the forbidden fruit and went even further, and so this duality world was created because there was a need, or we had forced that creation, but we were first on Earth. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Isn't it interesting, you know, because in the book that I'm listening to at the moment, through the week he was talking about, again, one of these context things. You know, he said, you know, people often think that, you know, with the evolution that you're evolving from something small and going to something bigger. He said, but in fact, it's the opposite. He says, because, and it's almost exactly what you just said then, is you're evolving or devolving maybe from the infinite down to something very specific.
Yeah.
And the invitation that a lot of spiritual teachings take is to stop the descent and start ascending again. So
Perfect. I agree.
So when you look at things like metaverse,
it's still descending.
It's just hijacking
that process,
the highway to hell. Yeah.
Yeah. And enticing people to enjoy the trip. Because entertainment is so big in our consciousness across the planet.
Well, it's largely an autistic fantasy, isn't it? I mean, you look at all of the stupid reality TV. That's what a misnomer that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? But as we've said several times before, as well, is that one of the perhaps the saving graces out of all of this is that the satanic elements can't lie. They have to tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
And they tell it with a lot of pride and joy and all of those sorts of emotions.
And motivation.
That's right.
Yeah.
A promise of riches.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like the grapes of wrath all over again, doesn't it? You know?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Mm. 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 Yeah, that's interesting how all of these things just sort of start to converge through this conversation a bit too, you know, like, because I remember when I was listening to him talking about, you know, it's not an ascension, it's a descension, you know, that where we are now is at a much lower plane than from whence we came.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And Moya talks about it and he writes about it as well.
Mm. And you know, you talked about being down in the dumps through the week, and I suppose I was too. In one sense, I guess if you want to, you know, coin it in that way, because a lot of the stuff that I've just been thinking about, you know, I just see these things around me, and like what corporates are doing and what governments are doing, and it's just a sort of, I wouldn't say despair, but it's just like a big sigh. It's just like, oh my goodness, you know, like just a big sigh. And the frustration or the, you know, the annoyance or the depression associated with it is that like what are they doing? You know, what on earth are they doing?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's just it really is this sort of headlong rush into something, you know, and maybe that's the dark, you know, the dark force agenda is to just prevent as many souls as it can from waking up.
That is the purpose, definitely. No, you're right. And it's been there from the beginning as an opportunity for us to become aware of it, recognize it, and start ascending. Stop the fall, you know. Put the motors on and rev and start, you know, pull the joystick back and let's start flying up now. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's a rather worrying development then, isn't it?
Well, that's why I brought it up, because I really thought it was a worrying development, and nothing that anybody can do about it, for sure. You're up against very, very, very powerful forces.
Well, even Bill Gates was out there spruiking again last week about the next pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're quite right. Yeah, and I can't believe Australian vaccinations are going such high percentages of being vaccinated. Really becoming right. So all this is all coming together in 2021, and I think until somebody in America, unless America burns, and Moya says it will, okay, but it doesn't say when, okay. It says America will be destroyed with fire and with water, and that could be, I don't know, disastrous for finding an individual that might help the world, like Donald Trump.
Well, what do you think of the role of groups like Alatra? Because I mean, its genesis seems to be out of the Ukraine or Russia, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, yeah, it's out of Russia, and I think I'm not sure if it is you told me originally that that the old man himself, you know, comes from a Russian Orthodox Church.
Mm, mm.
And, yeah, I don't see them as I see maybe the leader of the United States, for example, a powerful nation that can influence positively the whole world leaders' attitude and make a difference, and also reveal the truth to all these lies that have been going on. You see, it doesn't matter if you or I or Latra, you know, tell them it's a lot of lies. Okay, I mean, so what? You know, the majority of people follow the mainstream media and follow their leaders, okay, and believe what their leaders say. So I think it's as Moya said, and this is where he says it's all a one-man show. You have got to evolve and move on as an individual. He says his job down here on this planet is, that's why he's called the eagle. He is to find single souls across the globe that he can save. Okay, and he says he does it from the inner planes, not in the physical plane, and that's what it is. So, and I don't mean to make it sound like, you know, we've got to be selfish, but we're not going to get any help from Donald Trump or Alatra or anybody else. It's us, you and I, having our discussion, becoming aware, and moving forward in our life in this third dimension in a way that we feel is the way to get back to heaven.
Yeah, and I 100% endorse what you say there. I mean, even Sadhguru, you know, like he has this little catchphrase, you know, the way out is in, you know. So,
yeah.
You know, it definitely is, you know, and because I think the other thing too, you know, through all of this or listening to the book and pondering things is, you know, the topic of death comes up, you know, and my sense of it is at the moment is like, well, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If you're on this trajectory, you know, of spiritual growth and merging your soul, you know, into one, and that unification, it doesn't matter whether you're in this dimension or the next dimension or wherever, as long as that's the energy behind you. You know, in many respects, maybe this is the dimension where there's the most distraction. You know, is it the filter? You know, I don't know. You know?
Yeah, it is. No, it is. No, it definitely is. You can only do what we're doing here now, here and now, in this, the lowest of the low. What do we call it? Not dimension, but maybe it is a dimension of its own. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, it's like a manifestation, I guess, or something, isn't it? You know, it's hard to, as you say, whatever the label is.
Yeah. Because there was a time when the lowest of the low was the astral plane. Okay. And then that just wasn't a good enough place for soul to evolve. They just kept on eating the forbidden fruit. Okay. So I guess part of our is to stop eating the forbidden fruit. You know, maybe that comes first before we try and find the fruit to eat.
Yeah. I think it would be good if we could pick up that idea of the forbidden fruit maybe in our next discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
think that would be good.
Okay, well, maybe that's a good place to stop then.
Very thought-provoking or non-thought-provoking discussion.
Yeah, it really was interesting. Very, very interesting.
I noticed when I just looked at that metaverse page there before when we were sharing the screen there, I noticed it's got 50 million likes on it already.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I suppose you could just put that on there in a heartbeat anyway if you wanted to, couldn't you? So,
yeah, I don't believe in actual fact he has to. Okay. I think people want it. Okay. People want it. It's another distraction.
Which raises the interesting question, and maybe I know my own answer on it. Maybe it's time just to get off it altogether.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So, what is today? Today is Wednesday. No, Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah. Talk about it on Wednesday. Yeah.
I wonder if it's the forbidden fruit.
Yeah.
Very good. Very, very good.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
And you too, as always.
Yeah. As always, for sure.
You take care.
Yeah. Thanks. I will. You too. Bye.